The official palace announcement dropped with the surgical precision of a silver guillotine. To the uninitiated public, it was yet another breathtaking, picture-perfect chapter in the timeless tapestry of the British monarchy. Prince George, the second in line to the throne, was formally granted a historic, deeply coveted ceremonial title. The royal press office issued its polished, immaculate statement. The glowing photographs were distributed worldwide. The commentators nodded along in dutiful agreement, celebrating the natural progression of a future king. But behind the gilded doors of Clarence House, as the royal machinery toasted to the future, Queen Camilla reportedly fell completely, utterly apart. She did not break down out of malice toward Prince George, nor was she consumed by bitter resentment over a child receiving a crown honor. Her undoing was far more personal, far more devastating. This specific title, this precise ceremonial honor, was the golden key she had spent years quietly, meticulously orchestrating to hand to her own grandson, Freddie Parker Bowles. And the way she discovered it was being handed to Prince George instead was perhaps the ultimate act of psychological warfare. She read about it in the official palace press release, at the exact same second as the rest of the world. There was no preliminary phone call from her husband. There was no private briefing from senior courtiers. There was no gentle pre-announcement warning from the palace machinery she had sacrificed decades of her life to serve. She opened the announcement online like any ordinary citizen and received a message that reverberated through her very core. You may wear the crown, Camilla, but your family will never belong to this house. What transpired that afternoon was not a simple family misunderstanding or an isolated royal snub. It was the catastrophic collision of two opposing forces inside the modern monarchy, years of quiet calculation, whispered promises, and subtle maneuvering running directly into a wall of cold, unyielding bloodline purity. Before we unpack the full scope of this royal confrontation, take a moment to hit that subscribe button to stay connected for every deep dive breakdown. It supports our work tremendously and ensures you never miss an update on the internal battles shaping the crown. To comprehend the profound devastation that consumed Camilla that afternoon, one must rewind the clock and examine the intricate architecture of acceptance she had been building for nearly 2 decades. Camilla did not enter the royal family as a beloved figure. She crossed the palace threshold burdened by unprecedented public hostility. For over 10 years, international headlines branded her as the ultimate outsider, the woman who had shattered the fairy tale of Prince Charles and Princess Diana. The tabloid machinery reduced her existence to an ugly caricature, labeling her the homewrecker queen. Even as she endured the relentless scrutiny, slowly transitioning from despised mistress to royal wife, and ultimately to queen consort beside King Charles III, her hunger for validation was never fully satisfied. Securing her own crown was merely phase 1. What she truly craved, what she viewed as her final ultimate redemption, was the formal elevation of her bloodline. Through her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, Camilla brought 2 children into the royal orbit, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. Neither carried a title. Neither worked for the crown. And despite their proximity to the king, the royal institution applied a cold, unequivocal label to both of them: civilians. They were welcomed warmly at private Christmas luncheons, invited to state events, and included in informal family photographs. But when it came to official standing, hereditary weight, or institutional recognition, the palace boundary was absolute. Camilla refused to accept that her children and grandchildren would forever remain footnotes on the margins of royal history. To her, Tom, Laura, and her grandchildren were her true legacy, and she resolved to carve out a permanent place for them within the modern court. Her strategy was a masterclass in subtle, incremental positioning. She never marched into the sovereign's office making brazen demands. Instead, she let visual repetition do the heavy lifting. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the Parker Bowles family began appearing at high-profile royal engagements where non-working civilians had never previously set foot. Among her grandchildren, Freddie Parker Bowles emerged as the centerpiece of her ambitious vision. Freddie was charming, poised, impeccably mannered, and undeniably camera-ready, the perfect candidate to bridge the gap between Camilla's civilian past and her royal present. Camilla systematically introduced him into the royal frame. She ensured his achievements were subtly dropped into conversations at private dinners with influential courtiers. She gently lobbied for his image to appear in official newsletter features and family holiday cards. Tiny victories on their own, perhaps, but she kept stacking them one on top of another, year after year. When Charles finally acceded to the throne, Camilla recognized that her window of opportunity had fully opened. Behind closed doors, quiet whispers began to circulate about granting Freddie a minor hereditary title, perhaps a small, dormant barony that would slip beneath the radar of intense public scrutiny while permanently writing the Parker Bowles name into the peerage registry forever. Then came the incident at Sandringham, a moment that exposed just how far Camilla was willing to push, and how brutally the institutional guards were prepared to strike back. During the royal family's traditional Christmas morning walk to church, Camilla executed her most daring maneuver to date. She carefully arranged for Freddie Parker Bowles to stand directly behind Prince George, Charlotte, and Louis right in the center of the camera corridor where the world's media was stationed. The imagery would have been instantly iconic. Camilla's grandson standing shoulder to shoulder with the next generation of the monarchy, subtly signaling to millions that the blended family had finally arrived. However, before a single photographer could press a shutter, a senior courtier spotted the arrangement. Without hesitation, the official stepped in, physically pulled Freddie out of the line, and moved him all the way to the back of the procession, placing him alongside household staff and security detail just seconds before the lenses flared. Camilla watched the entire public humiliation unfold from across the courtyard. Her grandson had been physically removed from the royal line as if he were an intruder who had wandered into the frame by mistake. Bound by protocol and surrounded by hundreds of onlookers, she could not utter a word or cause a scene. She simply stood there, frozen, enduring the silent message loud and clear. That Christmas morning laid bare a stark reality that Camilla was desperately trying to ignore. The machinery of the crown had already passed judgment on her family. Nobody had sat her down to say it to her face, but watching Freddie get dragged out of that line said plenty. And leading that resistance was a formidable power structure that had no intention of letting her rewrite the rules, Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales. To understand why William and Catherine held the line so mercilessly, one must analyze their uncompromising philosophy regarding the future of the British monarchy. While the couple projects an image of warmth, accessibility, and modern relatability to the public, their internal strategy is governed by an absolute, non-negotiable directive: protect the purity and clarity of the direct bloodline at all costs. Prince William understood a fundamental truth about the survival of the institution. The monarchy's authority relies on a clean, unambiguous line of succession. The moment the public perceives that royal titles and honors are being distributed as personal favors to step relatives, the prestige of the crown collapses into ordinary nepotism. Where Camilla envisioned an inclusive, blended dynasty where her Parker Bowles descendants enjoyed royal status, William saw an existential threat to the brand. As the future sovereign, William had already designed a vision for a streamlined, highly focused monarchy, fewer working royals, strict boundaries, and zero institutional perks for individuals who did not possess direct Windsor blood. When Camilla began floating concept ideas for Freddie's potential title, William did not engage in loud, emotional arguments. Instead, he deployed a far more devastating weapon: total, impenetrable silence. William's distrust of Camilla's strategy was rooted in hard experience. Years earlier, after Camilla successfully secured an elevated profile for her children at a high-visibility state event, details of the arrangement were promptly leaked to a friendly media outlet, framing the moment as proof that the royal family was finally integrating her bloodline. The palace press office was forced into an emergency damage control exercise to walk back the narrative. William never forgot that maneuver. He realized that giving Camilla even a fraction of an inch on Freddie Parker Bowles would result in an immediate media blitz designed to force the palace's hand further. Therefore, whenever Camilla brought up the topic, William offered no debate, no counter-arguments, and no leverage, just absolute cold resistance. Catherine was equally resolute in defending these structural boundaries. During the curation process for an official royal holiday release, Catherine personally intervened to ensure that Freddie Parker Bowles was cropped out of a prominent group photograph. To Catherine, allowing a step-grandson to share equal visual real estate with George, Charlotte, and Louis would subtly communicate a royal status he simply did not possess. She reportedly made it clear to aides that years of deliberate branding would not be undone by a single compromised photograph. The shift in power became painfully obvious when Camilla requested a private, one-on-one meeting with Prince William to discuss her family's standing. In years past, when Charles was Prince of Wales, Camilla could easily navigate internal family dynamics through her husband. But now, dealing directly with William's office, she experienced a chilling reality check. Her request for a private audience was deferred for 3 weeks, and when the meeting finally occurred, it was casually folded into a large, routine group briefing packed with senior administrative staff. She was denied a private audience entirely. The message was unmistakable. The days of leveraging personal influence to secure institutional favors were officially over. When the time arrived to formally assign the historic ceremonial title reserved strictly for the direct heir, William ensured there was no ambiguity whatsoever. The honor belonged to Prince George. It was an absolute, unwavering assertion of Windsor supremacy, a public declaration that the future of the monarchy belonged exclusively to direct royal blood. Sources close to the estate noted that William was well aware of how deeply this decision would impact Camilla, yet he made zero effort to soften the blow. In his view, indulging false hopes would only prolong an inevitable confrontation. It was not a matter of personal cruelty. It was the ruthless execution of sovereign duty. Caught directly in the epicenter of this war was King Charles III, a monarch torn between his deep devotion to his wife and his absolute responsibility to his heir and the crown. For years, Charles had managed Camilla's hopes with gentle diplomatic evasions, offering reassuring phrases like, "We will find the appropriate moment." But when the final decision regarding the ceremonial title landed on his desk, the diplomatic stalling came to an abrupt, brutal end. He was forced to choose between greenlighting a title for Freddie and igniting an all-out war with his son and future king, or backing William and completely shattering his wife. In a desperate bid to preserve internal peace, Charles initially attempted to engineer a compromise. He proposed resurrecting a dormant, minor honorific, a title last used generations ago for a distant relative, with no claim to the throne and no attached land or revenue. It was designed purely as a symbolic style that would allow Freddie to attend official functions with a dignified title without altering the peerage or the line of succession. Charles presented the compromise to William, believing it offered a harmless resolution that would allow his son to say yes without surrendering anything that actually mattered. William vetoed the proposal instantly. To William, even a minor symbolic honorific compromised the principle of a slenderized, bloodline-pure monarchy. Accepting the compromise would establish a dangerous precedent, opening the door for endless future requests from non-royal branches of the family. Confronted by his son's absolute refusal, Charles made the ultimate calculation. As he had done at every major crisis point in his life, he chose the crown over personal sentiment. He summoned his private secretary and issued the instruction to finalize the press release declaring Prince George as the recipient of the ceremonial title. Then, to prevent further internal conflict, Charles added a decisive condition: make sure Freddie Parker Bowles' name or any mention of an alternative honorific never appears anywhere in the official briefing notes or background materials. Charles was deeply remorseful, yet he stood by his decision. He believed he had acted in the ultimate interest of the crown, preserving the stability of the monarchy and respecting the authority of his successor. But his institutional logic offered zero comfort to a woman whose lifelong ambition for her bloodline had just been systematically dismantled. Her crown belongs to her alone. Her legacy ends with her, and no matter how high she rises, the iron gates of the monarchy have closed forever against her bloodline.